Hello to you and welcome to this week's edition of France in Focus here on France 24. Coming up for you on this week's programme, the video which has caused outrage, apparently showing police in Calais in the north of France beating migrants as they tried to make their way to the UK. We report on a massive trial that's begun here in France. 12 defendants accused of being involved in a clan war on the French island of Corsica, which resulted in 2 murders. And we've a story of hope as the adapted military service regiment in France's overseas territories provides job skills to over 5,000 people every single year. We start this week, though, with a first for France. The French President, François Hollande, in fact, becoming the first French president ever to visit Cuba as part of his tour to the Caribbean. Now, his aim to get in early as the defrosting of relations between the US and Cuba continues. Whilst there, he met Raúl and Fidel Castro. Business deals very much to the fore. After his visit to Cuba, he continued with a visit to Haiti.
François Hollande's fall on the red carpet wasn't his biggest faux pas in the Caribbean islands. Inaugurating the world's biggest slavery memorial on the French island of Guadeloupe, the French president made controversial statements about the debt his country owes Haiti.
Quand je viendrai en Haïti, j'acquitterai.
I will settle our debt when I go to Haiti.
Que nous avons.
The crowd applauded, but minutes later, the French presidential palace issued a rectifying statement. It said Hollande was not referring to money France owed Haiti, but to a moral debt due to slavery. In 1804, slaves in Haiti defeated Napoleon's soldiers and expelled French slave owners. 20 years later, France said it would recognize Haiti as an independent country, but only if it reimburses slave owners of their lost properties.
In the 1825 French decree, King Charles X recognizes Haiti's independence if it paid 150 million gold francs.
In the 19th century, Haiti paid 120 million gold francs, the equivalent of 17 billion euros today. It represented at the time 10 times its annual public revenue. For those who say France has to reimburse Haiti, the debt was legally and morally unjustified. That's why when President Hollande arrived in the country, people shouted restitution, reparations, yes to money, no to moral debt. But President Martelly says it's unrealistic to go back on an international agreement sealed 200 years ago.
If France helps us to offer education to almost all Haitians, it would be worth more than any figure.
An opinion President Hollande shares. He's offering a 50 million euro program for education, saying,
On ne peut pas changer l'histoire. On peut changer l'avenir.
Now, this week saw an amateur video plastered across television news bulletins here in France. The video apparently showing police kicking, beating and throwing over a metal barrier migrants in the northern city of Calais who were desperately trying to reach the UK. It came less than 4 months, in fact, since Human Rights Watch had published a report criticising the police for their brutality and criticising the French government for failing to do anything to ease their living conditions.
They crossed the oceans, risked their lives in rickety boats, looking for the European El Dorado. Most of them fled war or poverty at home, in Syria, Eritrea, Sudan. Those who survive the journey often end up on the shores of Italy. After weeks, months, struggling to make a living, hundreds end up here in Calais, northern France. Their aim? Find a job across the channel.
In England, there is a very near to Calais, just only maybe take 1 hour. For the 1 hour, I stopped 2 months.
To reach the UK, some migrants hide in delivery trucks on the highway leading to the Eurotunnel. This video was filmed and edited by an NGO. It seems to show French police pushing migrants over the guardrail and using tear gas at close range.
When police arrest Tuvi and find Tuvi inside the truck, they beat Tuvi in the stick, and sometimes they give Tuvi kick.
French authorities deny any wrongdoing, but say they've launched an investigation. It's not the first time French police are accused of brutality against migrants. Earlier this year, Human Rights Watch said police violence occurred on a daily basis. Police unions say it's difficult to cope with the influx. Since the winter, the number of migrants has doubled.
There are 150 policemen for around 3,000 migrants. It's not possible.
2 or 3 years ago, we just put our foot down and the migrants left. But now they stand defiant.
Faced with the growing crisis, rights activists say the migration policy needs to change in France and across the EU.
The countries of entry don't welcome people, but they take their fingerprints. So people go round and round. They're caught in one country and sent back to the country of arrival. Then they leave again because there are no facilities for them there, because they're not considered refugees. They become illegal and end up working on the black market.
Officially, the EU took in 185,000 asylum seekers last year. Out of 28, only 6 countries welcomed 80% of them on their territory. France urges Europe to set up a quota system.
We have to share the number of asylum seekers across the EU. And in France, we have to reform asylum laws. And that's what the government has presented to Parliament, and that will be discussed at the Senate.
Under the bill, more would be done to improve asylum seekers' living conditions in France. But if their request is rejected, illegal immigrants could be systematically deported. The bill is due to become law in July.
Now to a massive trial which has begun this week here in France, involving 30 lawyers, 100 witnesses, 12 defendants, and incredibly high-level security. It all relates to a clan war on the French island of Corsica around 5 years ago. The main defendants, the main nationalist leader, Alain Orsoni, was accused of making death threats, and his son, Guy, was accused of 2 murders back in 2009.
As he entered the courthouse on the first day of his trial, Alain Orsoni was a man of few words.
Ready to fight.
Orsoni is on trial with 10 other men, including his son Guy, for their part in 2 murders. On January 3, 2009, Thierry Castola was gunned down near the city of Ajaccio in the south of the French island. 3 weeks later, Sabri Brahimi was also murdered. The 2 men were said to belong to the Petit Bar gang, named after the cafe favored by alleged gangsters. At the time, investigators quickly turned their attention to a rival family, the Orsonis, with Alain Orsoni's son, 24 at the time, accused of ordering the hits.
Guy Orsoni has always said he was innocent. The prosecution's scenario is simply based on a theory.
For the prosecution, the killings are a result of Orsoni's past. He used to be a leading figure of Corsica's independence movement, but after a series of deadly internal feuds, he fled the island in the mid-90s. In 2008, he returned from his self-imposed exile officially to take over Ajaccio's football club. Months later, the French police foiled a plot to assassinate him. Members of the Petit Bar gang were suspected and later found guilty.
You've got 2 entities on the same territory, Ajaccio and part of southern Corsica, who are fighting over the racketeering of nightclubs, over the drug business. In their world, when there is a disagreement, violence is the only solution.
According to investigators, the 2009 killings of Castola and Brahimi were the Orsoni clan's answer to the attempted murder of its leader. All of the accused deny having any part in the killings, but Orsoni has admitted sending a death threat to one of the victims. Though he has been cleared of the murder charges, his son Guy is accused of being the mastermind.
You'll see during the proceedings that the father is the real target. But they're only accusing him of the anecdotal and highly questionable offense of making a death threat. This anecdotal accusation is a ruse in order to have him on the stand.
77,000 pages of legal documents, more than 100 witnesses, and 2 months of proceedings to determine whether the murders were yet another result of Corsica's long history of organized crime.
Now to a story of real hope for you. 50 years ago, on the French island of Martinique, the Adapted Services Military Regiment was created. It still exists today, in fact, in France's overseas territories, providing real job skills to around 5,000 people every year. And just this week, in fact, the French presidency has announced that 7 new such centres are to be opened right here on mainland France.
A few months in uniform in the hope of getting a job. That's what more than 800 young people on the island of Martinique decide to do every year. One such recruit is Kilian, who doesn't mind the constraints of military life.
There's a set time when the lights go out and when we have to wake up. That's normally 5 a.m. Because there are several of us that need to take a shower, it's better to prepare your things in advance and wake up 20 or 30 minutes before everyone else just to have enough time.
On average, these volunteers sign a contract with the armed forces for 10 months.
Come on!
As well as vocational training, they learn about discipline and the rules of society. A third of the volunteers are women. The career paths they choose are mostly tourism or home and care services. After she passed her baccalaureate, Jessie tried unsuccessfully to find a job in tourism. The army is now giving her a second chance.
It's a way to make young people feel better about themselves and to tell them it's still possible to improve, change and succeed professionally.
Martinique's adapted military service regiment offers vocational training in many different industries, all adapted to the local labour market. The regiment's colonel sees it as a public service.
The 800 young people who were with us in 2014 had a hard time finding a job before they started. They come here to learn professional and social skills with the only goal of being employable and to integrate into the real world with our help.
Because the training is constantly adapted to the needs of local companies, over 80% of the people who go through the adapted military service end up with a job. Its success has encouraged the government to try it in mainland France. 7 military vocational training centres will soon be open to the public.
Well, as you can see here in Paris, it is now absolutely pouring with rain, so let's quit the north, shall we? Head for the south. The Cannes Film Festival is in full swing down there now. Hundreds of stars, of course, attend into the event. 19 films competing for the title of Best Film as well. We'll leave you with a few images of the festival. Thanks for watching this week's France in Focus. More editions, of course, coming up here on France 24.